teaching the structure of the face and teaching different techniques on how to draw heads and faces and getting the proportions of the face right. Um, Last week we did just the basic shapes that create the face or create all the facial features. So I'll get more into the whole head. We did some of the whole head last week, but I want to show you another technique to get the rest of the head and facial features from the front and from a three-quarter shot. And if there's time, and if you guys are good with the front and three-quarter, we'll do side view as well. Um, okay. First off, a little bit of review for those of you that did not see the video or did not see the stream or was not here last week. Um, Basically, or even the week before, all of my classes are pretty much like beginners classes where I'm trying to teach the fundamentals, and I'm trying to teach the raw basics and fundamentals, and that's mainly being able to break things down into shapes, the basic shapes: circles, ovals, squares, triangles, rectangles, trapezoids, rhomboids, stuff like that. Geometric shapes, things that can be easily drawn and that you learn to draw and be consistent at drawing, so that you always draw them the same way, the same size, or at least the size that you want them to be, without thinking about it, right? And once you get used to drawing things at the right size, then you know that you can always draw things in the right proportions. So with that, last week I did the basic structure of a face just by using some ovals, some triangles, and maybe a couple squares. And that basically starts out like this. You draw an oval that first represents an eye, okay, or the size of one eye, right? Um, Once you do that, let me just change my brush a little bit. Okay, so you have that. So you draw one, and then you draw one next to it on the left, and you want to draw another one on the right. So you have three of them in a line, and you try to make them as uniform as possible. That was like one of the things that we talked about in the first week was being able to draw the same shape, uniform size. Okay. Draw a line through these guys. I'm a little bit sideways, but it's okay. Then you make a even triangle from that line. Okay. It's going to be slightly off because I'm not. Okay. Then there's a center line. Then there is the bottom of that triangle is where the mouth is. Usually. Again, these are kind of like rules of thumb. Kind of get you started and get you used to seeing the proportions. If you draw a line in the middle of each eye, that gives you the guideline for where the mouth ends. Okay, usually the corners of the mouth are right at the middle of the eyes there. So you have lips, the mouth, lips. Okay, now if you take that triangle that you made and you cut off another even triangle at the bottom of it, so there's another even triangle right here. Okay, this line here is where is the sort of the end point of the nose. It's not quite the end point. I usually draw like a little half circle right here to kind of show the where the nose might actually terminate. But basically that line and the middle line at that cross section is where the tip of the nose is. And then if you draw a triangle or a couple lines, extra lines coming from that middle point of that middle oval there, this is the area that the nose is going to live. So the nose is going to be, it may not be that large, but I mean that's the area for where the nose sits, and that this point here is the tip of the nose. Okay, now once you have that, usually draw like a half circle right here to denote the chin. And if you want to know like how big the chin usually is, it is usually about an eye underneath the lips. You know, some chins are a little bit larger, some chins are a little bit smaller, but it's usually like an eye's worth of space there. One of the other things I want you to note is the cheekbones, which is another oval underneath the eyes. I try to draw these ovals a little bit wider than the eyes, you know, so there's a little bit of space there on the edges there. The cheekbones come out. Again, some people's cheekbones are smaller, or larger, or higher up or lower, you know, but just general, you know, you want to make sure that you account for where the cheekbones lie on the face, because they connect to this line here. You know, and ultimately this shape is basically the top of the skull, or the front part of the skull, and then the chin and the jaw, everything's on the hinge on the other part of the skull. Oops, I didn't want to draw that just yet. E. Oh, for goodness sake, E. No. Okay, 1. Okay. Now this, at this point, oh, the only other thing that you want to account for is forehead. Always make sure you have enough space for a forehead. And it's usually an oval that takes up the width of the 3 eyes there. I know some people draw heads and draw faces, and they don't account for having a forehead. The eyebrows literally go right up to the to the hairline, and that's not quite right. And also, I'm having trouble seeing my cursor here. Okay, here we go. Okay, and also your ears. Okay, so where your nose, where that line for the tip of the nose is, to the middle part of there, your ears will be right around in here. Some people say this is low, and yeah, it could be, you know, interpreted that way, but again, it's just for general purpose. The ears are usually in the middle of the face. You can draw them a little bit higher and have them, you know, stop, you know, a little bit higher than the nose, but that's generally where they fall. Okay, so those are the basic features of every face that you will ever come across. Everyone has 2 ears, 2 eyes, a nose, a mouth, a chin, you know, some cheekbones, and a forehead. If they don't have that, they're probably a mutant. And you know what? Draw them, because they're unique. But you know, that's pretty much it. I mean, once you understand these basic shapes, you can draw a face. You know, it just comes down to, you know, the proportions of those things. And for the most part, the proportion is the eye. You know, so if you draw someone with smaller eyes, you're going to get different features, you know, or different proportions. You know, and you can play around some of these proportions too. You know, like in this case, the nose is probably a little long. But that's okay, because I can draw a longer face if I want to. And that's what the next thing I want to talk about is how to get into face structures. Like there's different shapes of faces and heads, right? So once you have the basic structure of the face down, or at least all the facial features, then you can start worrying about what is the shape of the face and the jawline. Okay. One of the things I showed last week was that there's different charts that you can find online. I mean, if you do a Google search for, you know, head shapes or face shapes, you'll find that there's different sizes or different face structures. Okay, out there, and they usually say that there's, you know, people with round faces, square faces, triangle faces, diamond faces, long faces or oblong faces. You know, so I'm going to talk about that next. Now, give me 1 second. I'm being pinged here. Okay. Want me? So, okay. So taking the, you know, the same, you know, concept here. I'm going to move this over so we have that as a reference. So the next technique I'm going to show you is how to bring that in with something that you may already do or know, is that with the circle. Most people, like, they draw, when they draw heads, they start with a circle, or they start with an oval, or they start with the egg. And, you know, that's fine, provided that you already know what your proportions are. But a lot of times, you know, people are still learning the proportions, so, you know, they start with the egg, and then they kind of go from there, as far as, like, you know, breaking out the facial regions and stuff like that. But I still see people do this and then still get the position of the ear wrong, or, you know, they put the eyes too close together, or they put the eyes too wide, too far apart. So I'm going to show you a slightly different technique, um, in terms of dealing with heads, and even like the three-quarter view. Um, and yeah, it might go against, you know, things that you were taught or things that you already do now, but it will help in terms of being able to, you know, think differently about your art and think differently about how to come at things. So instead, if you're going to start with a circle, start with an actual circle, okay? And the circle does not represent the face. It only represents the top of the head. It represents the cranium. That's the only actual semi-round thing that's actually on the face, is the actual cranium. Everything else is kind of all over the place. You know, people's faces are not that even, okay? Maybe in anime world or manga land, you know, yes, you know, you have perfectly symmetrical faces, but, you know, everywhere else it's not that tidy. So if you're going to represent something as a circle, it's really only like the head, the top of the head, the upper portion of the head. So if this was going to be a you know, I'll do a front view first. So in that case, you start with a circle, and the eyes are in the lower portion of that circle, okay? Pretty much as low as you can get them without, you know, you want to cut that circle into like a small, it's not a half circle, it's barely like even a third. They're down here, okay? Okay, once you have that, and you have a center line, okay, then you can decide, okay, what face shape is this person going to have, okay? And the face shapes, again, they range. So I'll start with the diamond shaped face or head, okay? And it usually goes something like this, and it's literally a diamond. It's basically a square on its side. That diamond could be, you know, perfectly square. It could be a little long. I tend to make my diamonds like that. You know, they're a little bit, the bottom half being a little bit longer than the top, okay? But that's your guideline for the rest of the facial structure, okay? So you have the head, and now you have, you know, a guideline for where all the other facial features are going to land, and the chin. So at that point, you can then go back to the shapes that I initially showed you. And if you do the same, there, mouth, lips, chin, cheekbones, we have plenty of forehead, line, so that we know where the mouth ends. Okay, that's pretty much it. There's your face, okay? And you have plenty of room for everything. You have plenty of room for where to put your ears, okay? And you got a nice big old head there to put hair on, okay? Some people say, oh my god, the head's too big. It really isn't, okay? That's pretty much how it is. You can draw the circle a little bit smaller, sure. You can draw the eyes a little bit bigger, sure, okay? But this is pretty much it. All right, you need a good size face there, and enough area to put your hair on the thing. And the only thing that we're missing now is the jawline. Okay, that's what will fill out the rest of that space. That was the reason why the head looks so big, right? So, and that jawline has to follow the shape of the face that you have already established. Okay, and where your mouth position is. So I usually draw curved line through the mouth, okay, extending out past those middle points of the eyes there, okay? Because that's going to tell me where the jawline curves back into the chin. All right. Once you have that, then you have an idea. Okay, now I can follow, you know, the line that I've already set here, and finish it off. And there you have it. Okay, so that would be like, an example of, someone with a more, diamond or triangular face. And the triangular, usually also comes in that, their hairline isn't straight. It usually kind of contours up and into a peak. Um, so that's where they get that triangle shape or that diamond shape. They call it. Because their hairline kind of follows in that shape. Any questions so far? No questions. Okay. Moving on. I was going to do the same thing. Let's say this person has a square face. Don't just draw it straight on there, Lawrence. Come on. Okay. There we go. This is not supposed to be a three-quarter view, but for some reason I'm drifting here. So just ignore my drift a little bit because I'm trying to draw fast. Tip of the nose, right? Okay. That's fine. Now, someone with a more square face, their features may not be as round. But again, these features don't have to be ovals. I could easily make the eyes triangles. I could make the cheekbones triangles. And that actually might help in the case of someone's face who's more, angular like this one. I could have made the chin a triangle instead of a half circle. Could have made these more triangular to kind of emphasize that the person has an angular face. So you can play around with that. That sometimes too, like when you get more comfortable in terms of knowing where all the facial features go, you'll be able to actually give your faces more uniqueness by giving each of the features a specific shape. If you always use ovals or circles or whatever, you're always going to have roundish faces. If you always use angles, and triangles, you're going to have triangular faces. So if you mix it up, mix and match, you can get some unique stuff, and that's how you can kind of get some diversity in your characters or whatever, by changing around like the shape of their features, their eyes, their noses, their cheekbones, their lips. There's so many different shapes and so many different sizes, so there's many millions of combinations that you can do. you know okay, chin, we got a forehead here. Okay, we got that. Okay, we got ears. Okay, now in the case of a square head, jawline's going to be very deep set. So there's your square face, and it goes on and on. So if you do round faces, it'll be more, it'll be a circle, you know, with another circle underneath of it, essentially, forehead. You'll start to get used to, the more you do it, the more you'll get used to the proportions, so that you'll be able to do less and less setup And eventually you won't even have to use the lines. You won't have to use the shapes and the lines. You'll kind of know where everything, falls. If you tend to start with the eyes, or if you tend to start with the nose or whatever, you'll kind of know, um, because you've been getting used to, drawing everything out a certain way. But ultimately, you don't want to draw the shape of the face or the shape of the head or the shape of the jawline and the rest of the face until you know what the face looks like, right? If you know your character well enough, then go for it. But you know, actually, round faces are more. They have bigger cheeks, sort of like that. Um, and the cheekbones are roundish. Okay, but you get the idea. Any questions so far? No. Everyone good? Everyone's still alive? is it
Um,
is it boring?
no, sorry, I was looking. Uh, what if, what if you want to like put, like the squares with the ovals?
What if you want to put the squares with the wolves? You can. You can completely draw. I've seen. There's a guy that I know that's how he draws all of his cartoon characters. Like he doesn't like when he creates them. He literally starts with shapes. He doesn't draw, any features for a long time until he knows like the shape and the silhouette of the character. That's
Yeah.
that's a whole nother thing. But yeah, so you can represent your eyes as squares. Whatever floats your boat. But that's good because that's going to give you more of an insight into um, you know the features of your character. Okay,
Oh.
all of these shapes are meant as a guideline, but they could easily be swapped out for something else as long as you can maintain proportions. You know, I
Mm-hmm.
it's fine. Ultimately, the proportions are going to be the same. So here's where the nose is going to be. Here's where the mouth is going to be. Here's a lip. That's a rectangle. Rectangle. Okay, cheekbones are rectangles. So this is already looking like a square face, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So yeah, you can make them squares. You can mix and match. Please mix and match. I mean, that's how you get really interesting faces and facial features. So maybe you want to give someone diamond face and a long triangle for a nose and maybe a couple small triangles for the eyes, right? And yeah, I mean that's how cartoon characters are made. They're just a combination of shapes, really. And then that's how you give them life is by changing the shapes of the facial features. I'm going to give this guy who has a round face, but I'm going to give him you know pumpkin eyes instead. So his eyes are very high and wide, so that he's going to have that kind of a face. You know, and maybe he has you know an uncharacteristically long nose or something like that. But that's ultimately how it works. Is that you give once you know the basic, or the rule of thumb as far as where the proportions are, you can mess around with them, you know.
Yeah.
And the idea is that a lot of people get into the weeds and they get hung up on details and features, and you don't really get better as an artist with details and features. You get better as an artist when you know structure, you know where things go. You can always draw what they are later on, and you can always draw them better, right? But it won't matter how well you draw an eye if it's out of proportion. It doesn't matter how well you draw a nose if it's too high or too low, and it makes the viewer go, "That nose is weird," right? You can draw lips really well, but if you don't know where to put them, it won't make any sense, right? So
Yeah.
so get into the habit, especially when you're learning, and especially when you just want to do some studying or whatever. If you want to study faces and like look at magazines or whatever and study faces, break them down into shapes. break down the head shape, break down the shape of the nose and the eyes, and where the cheekbones are and where the lips are and what the shape of the lips are. You'll be surprised, and you see there's so many different varieties of faces. They're not all just the same three, which is what people tend to draw. They draw the same three faces, but there's so many variety, so many different, ways of drawing into so many different varieties of things that you can play around with it. There's nothing saying that you can't mix and match and try different things, because that's how you get to your style or to a unique, thing, that you might want to explore. Some people say that this method is very robotic, and it can be, because because it's all about breaking out, shapes, and ultimately, if you do it right, you can make some robot designs, you know, or Transformers, whatever. A lot of people used to say, "Oh, you're doing Transformers." No, I'm doing my studies, because I would do like the Optimus Prime eyes, you know, the Optimus Prime nose, bring it down. I mean, it's there you go. I mean, but it's ultimately it's still a face, right? Even Transformers, they're faces. They have eyes, they have noses.
Mm-hmm.
Just so happens that the lines of the face are just showing the contours of the face. Where the cheekbones are, especially Megatron with his high cheekbones. you know, so just utilize that. Um, One other thing I want to show is the three-quarter view. I want to show you a quick tip on how to lay out a three-quarter view. Starting with the circle, but again, don't try. I know a lot of people do the egg, and I'm not knocking the egg, but give the plain circle a try. Um, just so that you can get used to the other facial features and stuff like that. And eventually you can go back to the egg, because then at least you'll be drawing the egg at the right size, right? Or at least you'll be drawing a warped egg, right? That looks more like the shape of the face. That's the problem with the egg, is that the egg doesn't tell you, is it a square jaw? Is it a round face? Is it, you know what I mean? So that's why I don't tend to go with it. But okay, in general, start again with a circle. Um, Now this line where the eyes are going to go, okay, this is kind of crucial, all right, especially with the three-quarter view. Not so much on the straight ahead view, it's actually, let me just explain it. But that eye line is crucial, because where that lands is going to be kind of dictate kind of the tilt of the head, and I'll get into that in a minute. But generally, if the eyes are, excuse me, in a straight on neutral position, it's about there. Obviously, if the person's looking down or in a lower, tilt of the head, that line is going to be much lower. So just be aware of how low you're putting that line, because it might mess you up later on, when you go to add the extra guidelines. Whoops, it's supposed to be an eraser. Okay, but for the general three-quarter view, general average three-quarter view, um, it's about there. Same as when we were doing the straight on shots. So right about there. Split the head in half again, and you're probably going, wait a minute, we're doing a three-quarter view, so why am I doing exactly what I did with a straight on view? Well, it's a little bit different, because we're going to make an A out of those two lines. Now, where you do this A, and I usually draw the A like this. You can draw a little bit more wide set, but the A is going to dictate some measurements. Okay, so you have a line, and you have a line, and there's an A right here. Okay, that's splitting up the circle. Now, generally, when you have that A, now you know a few things. Okay, about where you're going to lay things out. You know that the middle of the face is right about here. Okay, and you know that your ear is going to be right about there, and I'll show you how. Middle of the face, eye, generally your eye, the eye closest to the person is going to be around here. Some people put it right on in the area there. Some people a little bit lower. It really depends on you and your personal style. Actually, let me draw this a little bit bigger so I can see what I'm doing. I don't know why I'm like drawing so small. All right. Split in half. Draw the A. All right. Fill the face. I'm gonna say that I'm gonna put the eye right there. So now you know that eye. And of course, the eye that's farther away from the viewer is going to be a little bit smaller, just for the foreshortening effect. Okay. So there's your three eyes. Um, you can then draw a line that goes past the A there. Another line there. You can make it like a pseudo triangle there, and you know, again here, the mouth line will be right there. Nose will be about there, and if once you have that nose line, and you know the ear is going to be right about there. I messed that up. There we go. That's a little bit better. Chin. Should just draw a straight line there. Yep. Yeah, straight line. There you go. Cheekbones. Okay, now because of where the nose is here, okay, your cheekbones are gonna the cheekbone that's further away is gonna kind of extend in because it's gonna be behind the nose, right? So, but the idea is that you want to make sure that you know where the cheekbone is on that three-quarter view underneath the eye, okay? Because that's gonna determine the jaw line over there, okay? A lot of people don't think about where that is, but it's really important that you know if the cheekbone is up, if it's low, because there's again the whole skeleton or structure of the face is underneath here. Okay, so you want to make sure that you're representing all of that. Okay, now at this point again, you're at the point where okay, now I have all my facial features. Now what is going to be my face shape? Now notice I didn't put the jawline in, and it's really important that you leave enough space. Everyone always messes up this space right in here. This is the holy grail. Okay, if you get this wrong, your whole face is messed up, and everyone here who's drawn faces has probably seen that. So you want to make sure that you really get a lock on what your face structure is going to be. So I'm going to make this person another diamond. Okay, and that's going to give me an idea there. Okay, so there's my diamond. Okay, now once I have that, now notice that, this is where when you're drawing three-quarters, this is where, knowing how to draw your shapes in 3 dimensions, really helps, okay? Because I put a little curve on this. Now you don't have to. I mean, if you're not good at that yet, just draw them straight lines. It doesn't really matter. It's more for they're more guidelines anyway. But the more you get into drawing forms, okay, things that have 3 dimensions, okay, this is actually another technique, that the mask technique, where a lot of people do. Instead of drawing an egg or drawing a circle for the head, they just draw the face first. They draw the mask. And the mask could be the shape of that they want the face, and that could be triangular, it could be squarish, it could be a more round mask. But the idea is that the mask is a 3-dimensional form in which you put a face on. So when you get better at knowing where all your facial features are, you can ditch the circle altogether and just start with the mask, start with the face itself, and then you can draw the rest of the face, off of the mask. But that's where that comes in. So you draw that shape, whether it's going to be diamond or square or circular or whatever, and then once you have that, then you can start figuring out where your jawline is going to be. And again, it's going to be kind of a, you know, there's that mouth line. The mouth, if you extend that mouth line down a bit, that'll give you an idea of where the jaw line comes in. Okay. There you go there. Dip in, it comes out for the cheekbone. Okay, and then once you connect to the mouth, then it also comes down here. And again, you can determine whether it's going to come out a little bit more. You know, you can do that. I know there's some faces where the cheeks are very well defined. You know, almost chiseled. You know, so you might have, you know, a line coming in, and then there's the jaw there. There you have it. But here at least you know. Okay, I have my ears. Ears are in the right place. I have my jawline, and all my facial features are where they need to be. You know, this is a very rough sketch, but at least it's a good, you know, it lays the groundwork, you know, for, you know, drawing the rest of the face and features and stuff like that. But at least now you have, you know, I like this method because at least there's room for everything. You have a well-defined jaw. There's room for the hairline. Because what if your character's bald? You know, you can't get away with like covering everything up with bangs, which is what people do. Oh, I'm not going to cover that up with a bang. No, there's a forehead there. There's going to be a hairline here. You know, so make sure you can represent that. Okay. Any questions? I lost everybody. Everyone left.
Um,
Is it really late or something?
yes, actually.
Okay. Lay it on
What
me.
what what if I'm at the stage where I like sometimes try that little weird mask thing,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know the structure of the face because I've been told that I sometimes put my eyes too close together,
Mm-hmm.
and I've never used my method thingy
Mm-hmm.
because when I do try to use it, it's like it's still too close together, or it's too big, or it's too small. And
So what when you're using the mask method or just in general?
in general, it's the eyeball thing.
Well, just make sure that you're not drawing your eyes. I know. Do you draw in manga style?
Uh, yes,
Manga
I
anime
do.
style. Okay. Yeah, because people tend to make the eyes really really big. Okay, and that's fine. But the thing with
Mhm.
the manga anime style is that it still follows certain proportions. Okay, and I'll show you what I mean by that. It still follows the same proportions as that they are getting away with taking the area of the face. Okay, and making one feature bigger when you make the other feature smaller. Okay, so
Mhm.
but the proportions are pretty much the same. Okay, so if you tend to draw your eyes too close together, it means that you're just not giving them enough space. They can't be too close together because it needs to be the bridge of the nose is right there. Okay,
Mhm.
so no matter which method you use, okay, once you know the center line, let's say you have a center point. Okay, make sure you draw that first eye, even if you have to literally draw the damn eye, right?
Mhm.
Okay, just so you know, don't put anything here. Okay, then you can draw your other eyes next to it. Now I'm doing kind of a three-quarter shot, so my eyes are more like ovaled, but um,
Oh,
that's
that makes
that's okay. That's ultimately the thing. Okay, so but technically, what I could do here, I'll show you. I'll show you even this. I'll do it this way. Um, ah, I'll do it this way, so you should get a better idea. Um, just make sure that you leave space. So you know, let's say here's my three eyes. Okay, because like this, I can kind of show you a style thing that anime guys do. Um, okay, three eyes. nose. Okay. Okay. So get the. Say this is going to be a round face. This pen. I'm still getting used to this tablet. Okay, here we go. Lay forehead. Okay. Okay. Now I tend to draw my eyes a little bit more conservatively, so I'll draw them, smaller. Okay. More
Mm-hmm.
like realistic dimensions. Okay. But if you decide you're not going to do that, and you want to do more, anime style or whatever, you can make the eyes bigger. Okay. But don't encroach too much on the nose area. Okay. So I can still do large eyes, right?
I'm trying to like see what you're drawing, but all I see is like the sketch in the way, like the rough.
Oh, let me hang on. Let me switch to my big brush. Come on. These are like 1990s eyes.
Oh, you're fine.
Big eyes. Anyway, um, but the reason why you can get away with the bigger eyes is because you have enough space because you had a forehead up here, so you're not
Mm-hmm.
encroaching on the hairline because it's still up there, right? You're not encroaching too much on the nose. This eye should not cross over into where the nose is because there's still a nose here. But most of the time they draw the eyes really big and then they make the nose really small. Okay, or even bring it up a little bit. Okay, but you still have the facial features. Like I didn't change the face at all. Face is still the same, right?
Yeah.
Okay, you just changed the proportions of the features. Okay, okay, you just have to make sure that you have enough space there to get away with it. And if so, like these, yeah, my eyes here is, this one's still a little bit in. You can always just do that. Doop. You want to make sure that you don't want to do this because that's wrong, right? There's not enough space over here for the hairline. Okay,
Oh my gosh, I do that.
right? Yeah, that's out of proportion. Okay, so you have to make sure that whatever size you make things, you got to make sure there's enough space to get around that eye, but not you know
Too much.
not too much, right? Because that's not quite right either. Okay, so
Yeah.
there's a sweet spot. That's why the A kind of comes in handy, that A trick, because at least it gives you an idea. And I'm going to draw. Hang on, let me get a different color here. Because that's my original A that I started with. And for the most part, I'm still in proportion. Okay, the eye is still in that center area. The ear is over here. The middle of the face is over there. You know, this other eye usually is on the other side of that line. It doesn't. Sometimes it crouches over. It depends on the style. And again, you have to. And I get it because you have to allow for different people's style. Sometimes people draw eyes differently and noses differently and stuff like that. But as a
Yeah.
general rule of thumb, that's how you get the dimensions right. You know. So make sure you start with a even dimension, and then you can always say, okay, I'm going to make the eyes a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger, and every time you change that proportion, something else has to change. Either the nose has to get smaller, the mouth has to come up or get bigger, the chin will either have to get bigger or smaller, you know. But your the facial structure that you created shouldn't change too much. The outer structure, you're just changing the features inside.
Yeah.
Okay. Another thing
Mm-hmm.
too that I didn't do here that a lot of manga people do, especially like in the old days, um, they would, if they make the eyes bigger like this, they usually set them lower. I've noticed, so they'll set them a lot lower, like there,
Mm-hmm.
you know, which is fine too, because then you still have the nose, you still have the, you're still working with, as long as they're not lower than the nose, you're fine. Um, you know, and usually because of that, they can also, depending on like what their style is with mouths and stuff like that, you know, they'll even move the mouth up and give the chin more area. But notice that I'm just moving the features around. I haven't had to change the chin line at all. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's the same. The neck is the same. The chin is the same. All I did was just move the features around. Um, so that's the trick. Is that don't let your style features or whatever change the structure of the face. The structure of the face is is proportional. Okay, it's the
Yeah.
features that you throw out of whack. But you can get away with it if you keep things somewhat in proportion. But even just moving around those features, I didn't change the ear. The ear's still in the same place, still in proportion. So they're just small things that you can do to adjust.